Welcome, everyone. My name is Dick Pafford. I'm a Tarrant County Master Gardener, and I will be one of your hosts for this evening's presentation. The other Master Gardeners helping me this evening are Nancy Curl and Teresa Thomas. The presentation this evening is presented by Brittnay Meyer. She's the Tarrant County Home Horticultural Agent. Her presentation is titled Winterizing Your Landscape. Brittnay has a bachelor's in horticulture and crop science from Sam Houston State University, with a Master of Science in Plant Pathology and Microbiology from Texas A&M University. Therefore, she has the knowledge to help with not only the what and how to grow a beautiful garden and landscape, but can help determine what is potentially wrong with your plants when they're not performing well. She has worked in the commercial landscape industry and public gardens for 6 years. Realizing the gap between consumers, industry, research, she wanted to be a part of Extension to help bridge the gap. She is passionate about agriculture and gardening education in both adults and youth within the county. The general public learning from good sources where food comes from is her next step for the agriculture community. She grew up in agriculture, has loved every minute of it. Growing up, she rode horses, raised cattle and swine, played outside in the dirt at every opportunity. She loves to learn and believes learning never stops. Though both her degrees are in horticulture, she has a diverse knowledge base that includes both small and large animals, as well as construction. She loves to read and play board games or any other nerdy thing. She has 3 ridiculous cats that drive her insane, but she loves it. We're going to have a few recommendations before we begin the program. We ask that you please remain muted until otherwise instructed. Please keep all your web cameras turned off. We ask that your questions be pertinent and educational to the topic and somewhat general. All comments should be respectful to the speaker, audience, host, AgriLife, and the Master Gardener program. If you fail to follow the meeting code of conduct, you could be removed from the session. There will be a link in the chat for an evaluation form. We ask that you please fill this out before leaving. Your questions can be entered in chat and they will be answered at the end of the program, or you can unmute at the end of the program and ask Brittnay your questions. Before we begin Brittnay's presentation, there will be a short TRW presentation on water conservation, and I'll see if we can get that started. The Tarrant County Master Gardener Association has partnered with the Tarrant Regional Water District to encourage water conservation. TRWD maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean that water to meet drinking standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield, and many others to provide water conservation programs to the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of our growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people living in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you're a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler's checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home, provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce water waste. There's also an event calendar where you can find information about future classes and workshops. So be sure and check out SaveTarrantWater.com to sign up for their free services. Okay, Brittnay, now if you're ready, you can begin your presentation.
Okay, I had to find the unmute button. Okay, so you can see the screen fine, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we are going, as Dick said, cover winterizing your landscape, but also a little bit about winter plant management. So these topics come from our Earthkind landscaping. Earthkind is a program that uses research-based proven techniques for landscapes and gardens to protect our environment while also making those gardens and our landscapes beautiful. It's a blend of conventional and organic. Back in the day, Dr. Steve George looked at, organic gardening that was becoming really popular and realized both our conventional and organic are good on their own, but they're at their best when they're combined. Its target is to reduce maintenance requirements, obviously be environmentally sound and resource efficient, and in its environmental stewardship program. So it's used to create beautiful, easy care landscapes while protecting our natural resources. And as I said, back in the 1980s, Dr. Steve George, who at the time was the Bexar County Horde agent, he is now a Earthkind specialist in Dallas, created this hybrid approach, and his wife is actually the one who named the Earthkind program. It's known as the Make Sense approach. It's more common knowledge, going through and seeing combining these two techniques is the best. And it is the fastest growing university program of its kind in the nation. So Earthkind encourages water conservation, water quality protection, reduction of the use of fertilizers and pesticides when able, energy conservation, and the reduce of yard waste in landfills. Back in 2020, of the 1.7 million tons of materials from landfills were diverted to recycling and reuse in Texas because they were just yard waste. Yard trimmings is the largest quality materials that gets diverted. I know a lot of people, especially this time of year, they're raking up leaves in their yard and putting them in plastic bags. You can get from your waste management company, from the city, or even you can get them at Lowe's and Home Depot. If you do want to get rid of your leaves, you can put them in the paper bags so they can be recycled properly. So when do we want to winterize? For here in Tarrant County, our frost dates are November 14th through March 21st. A lot of people hear the word frost date and don't understand it. So it's the average date of the last light freeze in spring and the first light freeze in fall. How we classify types of freezes from light, moderate, and severe. You can see that light is 29 to 32 degrees. So right there at when water would normally freeze. Moderate is 25 to 28, when most vegetation in the landscape is going to have some damage to its leaves and its stems. And then severe freezes of 24 and below, heavy damage most likely occurs. So when we've been having these snow events, we're hitting those severe freezes. But I always recommend, as soon as temperatures start to drop, regardless if they go up and down, it's when you need to prepare. Fall, especially going into winter, is a good time to reevaluate your landscape in terms of designs and where you want to make improvements. Taking a systematic approach to landscaping is critical in conserving and protecting our natural resources while maintaining quality landscape functionality. A strategic planning of a landscape or garden is proper plant selection. So if you live in North Texas or South Texas, knowing what plants are for your region and for your area is the best way to get the most out of your landscape. And of course, using our native or adapted plants are always going to be the best choice for your landscape and require the least amount of maintenance. They are meant to grow here and be here and survive our ridiculous droughts. So the most important that I feel for protecting during the winter is protecting your irrigation pipes. Because if you protect those outside pipes, you're going to end up protecting your home. Biggest thing, and I see it a lot in new homeowners, are buying a new house is knowing where those pipes are and what type of irrigation system you have. Sometimes if it's new construction, or you should always ask if it's new construction for your irrigation plans. If you're buying an older house and there is no irrigation plan, you can do your own by flagging out your sprinkler heads by turning on your system and locating those above ground sections. Or you can have a licensed professional come out and figure out where are your pipes and your sprinkler heads and what size of pipes you have for your irrigation system. As the video said, at savetarrantwater.com, you can get the residential sprinkler evaluation program, where a licensed irrigation company will come out and check for leaks, broken heads, improper backflow parts, because you have to have a backflow system with the irrigation system in the city. And that's not only to protect you, but to protect your neighbors if something were to happen. So during the winter, when we are going to have those prolonged hard freezes, turn your system off. Know your controller, find that controller box, and just turn it off. If you have anything above ground, any pieces of your system, pipes, faucets, make sure to insulate them. You can get the fancy insulators at Home Depot. You can just get plain foam pipe covering, or if worse comes to worse and you're unprepared, a towel or a t-shirt will work just as well. If you are comfortable with doing it, drain your irrigation components that are above ground. YouTube can be your best friend as long as you know where you're finding these sources are great. Most irrigation websites will have a how-to or a video or something of how to winterize your system. So you can check your box. It should have the brand name on there, and you can go to their website and find their how-tos. And then, of course, the easiest thing to do is to drain your water hoses. Make sure to drain them, put them up for the winter. Your Texas, it's hit or miss if you're actually going to need to water or not. But if you know we're going to have a week of long freezes, just put the water hose up. So now talking about our plants. So we're going to protect our plants from that frostbite. One of the easiest things is our container plants that are outside, if they're small enough to bring inside. Roots, because they are in a container and they're not in the ground, they're going to be more susceptible to freezing because that pot's not going to keep the soil warm. So bring what you can indoors, or you can buy some fairly cheap greenhouses on Amazon, at Walmart, any of the box stores. They'll have some nice size greenhouses for you to use. Move plants out of wind exposure if you can't bring them inside. If you have a covered patio or a good amount of tree cover, those trees and those patios will help retain heat if you can't bring inside. And then if your patio isn't protected from a north wind, you can buy painter's plastic or any landscaper fabric or anything to kind of block that wind. And it's still clear so you can see out, even if you live in an apartment. That's what I used to do when I lived in apartments, is I would put painter's plastic or greenhouse plastic around my balcony. Never got in trouble for it. So as long as it looks nice, it's fine. And then obviously our more hardy plants, those that have that really hard bark, like a tree kind of, don't really need to be moved inside unless we have a super hard prolonged freeze, which luckily we haven't had one. Or you can always cover them by covering them with freeze cloth, burlap, or a little mini greenhouse of your own making. I've used other pots and put them on top of a pot that's a little either the same size or a little bigger to protect the plant as much as I can if they're a hardy plant. And then, of course, be careful with what plants you bring inside. Know if they're harmful to your animals, and if they are, make sure there is a room you can put them in that they're going to get sunlight. You're going to remember to water them, but they're away from your animals. I have a cat that likes to try to eat the cactus constantly. No matter how many times the cactus bites back, my cat still tries to eat it. So for your preparing your landscapes, the most basic thing you can do is to remove those warm weather plants before a hard freeze. They're not made for it. They're not going to do well. They're going to be completely damaged. And that could possibly hurt your more hardier plants by those droopy, melty looking plants being attached to your hardy plants and opening a point of possible disease to enter your landscape. And also, it's a great time now to be planting those cool season plants. So plants like pansies, snapdragons, dianthus, the ornamental cabbage, kale, and things like that. Or you can even plant winter veggies and use them for ornamental purposes. Visit local nurseries so you know you are getting a native or a plant that is supposed to be here and is well for your area. And of course, the most basic thing is to remove dead or diseased plants. It is the perfect time. Everything's mostly lost its leaves, so you can see what is dead and what is diseased. And also removing those weeds before they start setting seed again reduces them coming back next year, so less maintenance on you. So for our outdoor landscape plants, really getting into the nitty-gritty of that plant management, trim those tender plants to the ground and you can mulch over them. And before you just go cutting things, make sure it is a plant that can come back after being cut to the ground. You have bananas or cannas in your yard, anything like that, those can be cut to the ground because they have those big, nice tubers underground. Mulch over them to protect them, protect that root system. But before you go cutting, do your research. You can always contact the master gardener, help desk, or me, and we can help you make sure you're doing the right thing. Obviously, because it is colder, our plants are not using as much water. They're not losing water from their leaves because it's so hot. Reduce your watering schedule. If you overwater, it's super easy to overwater during the winter. A lot of people do it, and then they wonder why their grass or other plants are dying. It's generally because you're overwatering. If you don't have an automatic system and you're watering by hand, or if you do have an automatic system and you can just turn it off and on, only water when the plants are visibly wilting, not completely wilty and look desperate. If they've kind of drooped over just a little bit, that's the perfect time to start watering. If we're going to have a hard freeze, watering right before that hard freeze is going to actually help the soil retain heat. Water displaces air in the soil and it's slower to cool. And then a moist ground stays warmer than dry. Remove frost from your most tender plants if you can before the sun hits it, because that rapid change in temperature is going to shock the plants, and sometimes the cells within our leaves will burst. If you are going to fertilize during the winter and not just preparing for spring, make sure to fertilize with high potassium and high phosphorus and very low nitrogen. Nitrogen is the it tells the plant that it is time to grow. That is what that nutrient is for. But phosphorus and potassium helps to thicken those cell walls and get them prepared to last through the winter. Gives them all those carbs and those sugars so they can maintain their cells and store them up and get ready for that great spring weather to start growing again. It's also a great time to apply pre-emergent herbicides for winter weeds. We are in Texas. It gets warm enough to have winter weeds. You don't have to, but it's a great thing to do right before we start getting too cold. And then this is the perfect time to start planting those wildflower seeds for a beautiful spring bloom. Most of our wildflower seeds need time for the really hard seed coat, especially bluebonnets, to be either cracked by insects or a freeze-thaw cycle. So they're going to get really cold, thaw out, and that outer shell is just going to crack open just a little bit to allow nutrients and water to get into that little baby plant in the middle. So other to-dos in the winter to get your landscape ready for overwintering and for spring. You're going to want to wait until late winter when all your plants are dormant, those hardy plants like your trees and hibiscus, to prune them. Make sure they are done. There's no more leaves on them. They are in their dormant stage. That is going to prevent early growth if it gets warmer, and it's also going to prevent cold damage to that tender inner layer of the plants. And of course, during the winter, it's the better to prune because it's going to protect your plants from insect and disease. Springtime is when all the insects are again waking up. So if you cut and prune during that time, they're going to be more attracted to that new cut. During the winter, there's not as much activity, so there won't be insects really drawn to it. And also with the cold weather, it's going to help that new cut harden. Plus, once all of the leaves fall off and you can actually see the structure of your tree, you can see where there are branches that are crossing and rubbing against each other, or if there's any dieback. So you can actually see what you're doing. The biggest caveat and the biggest warning I say is if you know the tree or the plant that you are cutting is a spring flowering tree or shrub, don't cut it. Don't prune it back heavily because you're going to cut all the buds off. You can look at that stem or the branch and you'll see the buds along and they're getting ready. They're going to overwinter on that branch and get ready to bloom in spring. So just be careful with what you're cutting. Again, always do your research, know what you're doing, know what your plants are. And you don't have to do it every single year. You don't have to prune every year. I generally aim for every other or every 3 years if you have large trees. So another great thing to do if you have crepe myrtles, you'll see a lot of mites possibly on, or that heart, that scale that's on your tree. This is a great time to get that horticultural oil and spread it on your trees or your shrubs that have any of these lovely little mites. You can see they have this nice protective layer on them. So if you spray them with insecticides, it's not going to get in. But that oil sits on top for a long time and kind of encases them in a little bubble, and it's going to suffocate them. So because we have been getting more snow and some of the roads and stuff are being salted, some people will salt their porches and their driveways. If you see anyone or if you are spreading salt, be very conscious of where your plants are. And if you get any on your plants or especially on your grass, that's really easy on walkways and driveways. Either wipe them off the plant if you can, or hose them off really well to protect from that salt burn. So cutting back your perennials at the right time. You want, again, to make sure your perennials are completely dormant before you cut anything back. Because if you cut it back too quickly, you're taking time away for that plant to prepare for the winter and to get ready to bloom in the spring. If it's not completely dormant, it is still in the process of gathering its nutrients it needs. So you can see if there's still leaves and green fleshy material growing, then you want to hold off a little bit. And another great thing about winter, from about November to February usually, depending on where you are, is a great time to plant new trees and shrubs. So why this is a great time is you're getting those trees in the ground with no leaves on the top. They're not focused on growing. All they're going to focus on is getting their root system established. So you're giving them a couple of months before that great big spring growth, and they're going to be more established, better off in the long run. That you're not going to see them struggle as much during a drought if you give them time to get their root system nice and going. Texas A&M Forest Service has a great app on their website, or great little finder on the website that has a list for the ideal trees and shrubs and stuff for your area. So make sure you go online and look at that. Our Earthkind website also has that, where you can type in your zip code and get it right there to where you're living. Or I believe you can even put in your address. If you so choose, you can overseed with a cool season grass, so you have a pretty lawn all year round, but that means more maintenance during the already busy holiday seasons. It also means during the spring, you're going to have to fight that cool season grass a little bit to get your warm season grass more maintained. But I've had some people tell me that they love having those cool season grasses to go outside and take care of, so they can take a break from their family when everyone comes to visit and you just need a break. So using protective barriers on those plants that you can't bring inside, but they're not really prepared for the cold weather. Frost or freeze cloth you can get at any box store, you can buy on Amazon. Most native nurseries or any nursery should have these in stock right now. You're going to put them on some kind of cage or some kind of support system to where they're not actually touching the plant to keep that frost off of them. You can do burlap as well. And these trees down here in the bottom, they're nicely wrapped and tucked in for the winter. And burlap, that's just a little harder to come by. Again, you can do removable greenhouse structures. When I was in grad school living in College Station, I built a little greenhouse out of plywood and 2x4s and just covered it with double layered painter's plastic. And that first really hard snow and freeze that we had in College Station, all my cannas and tropical plants survived it, no problem. If it's removable, you're going to remove it during the day when the sun is out and it's really warm, and then put them back over at night. And as I said before, you can use pots or other containers to put over top plants if they're small enough, and kind of help insulate that way. A great way to insulate your root zones is by simply mulching. Everyone loves to mulch in the spring and have that beautiful, rich, brown, deep color, but it's actually even more important to do during the winter to protect those roots. It's going to help retain that heat, and it's going to help the soil stay cooler during the night, but also retaining the heat from the day and keeping those root zones really nice and happy. It's going to retain moisture to keep the soil actually moist. So when it does freeze, there's less air and less likely to freeze. Leaves are a great option for mulch. If you are getting rid of your leaves, you are just giving away not only mulch, but you're giving away your fertilizers or nutrients that your plants have been taking up. Leaves in a tree hold about 75% of the nutrients that tree has been taking up during its growing season. Quick way to get mulch: just use your lawnmower and run over those leaves and mulch them all up. And then you can either leave them on the grass, because that's going to give them a good amount of nutrients, or you can rake them up and put them on your beds or on your pots and everything, wherever you want to keep them. For an Earthkind landscape, you are going to want to maintain a 3-inch layer all year round of mulch to improve your soil and plant health. So now we're going to talk specifically about lawns. The biggest thing is it's not going to stay green all year, and that's okay. It's not meant to. Warm season grasses will go dormant during the winter, and that is what their life cycle is about. So as I said, unless you overseed with a cool weather, cool season grass, it's going to be brown in the winter. But that dormant cycle, that dormant season, helps to protect the root zone So, if it freezes, the grass isn't actively taking in nutrients or trying to take up that water. It's going to protect it from freezing over and then not coming back in the spring. Again, leaf debris on the ground creates a great insulation barrier as long as it is mulched up. You don't want to keep those really big oak leaves or other really big leaves, because even during the winter, even during the dormant season, your grass is taking in sun, and it also helps to dry it out so it doesn't stay moist all the time and invite diseases. Don't mow before a predicted freeze. Keeping that top layer of your grass a little longer will help to protect the root zone. It's going to create that little insulation barrier. The tops might freeze of your grass, and that's fine. After the freeze and it's warmer, go and mow, and your grass will be great. Again, fertilizing in the winter, you want higher in phosphorus, potassium, and very low in nitrogen. So you generally want to fertilize 3 weeks before the first frost date. But with Texas, as long as you know that we're going to have at least a week or more of warmer temperatures, you can fertilize a little bit. Just don't go overboard, because you don't want the grass to try to grow again. This is also a great time of year to test your soil for spring. Your garden and landscape and grass has been taking up nutrients all year, and it's probably depleted the soil a little bit. So you can either call our office, call the Master Gardener office, or go online to the Texas A&M Soil Testing Lab to get instructions of how to take a soil sample. If you call up here, we will mail you a testing bag and the soil instructions. You don't have to have a fancy bag. You can put them in a plastic bag for your soil sample. You don't want to completely dry out your soil, like putting it in the oven or anything. Just make sure it's not soaking wet. And double bag, triple bag your soil sample. Make sure it is not going to burst open when it's mailed. I have seen many of angry mail carriers open up the back of their truck and have a busted bag of soil just everywhere. And then, of course, once it's completely dormant, you don't need to water. It'll be fine during the winter as long as we get a little bit of rain. Another great thing to remember during the winter, and a great time to do this, is to take care of your tools. You're not using them as much. You can sit down. It's a nice, relaxing way to spend your day. You can clean your pruners and sharpen them. Clean your rakes and your shovels of any debris or mud before you store them for the winter. Another big thing is to drain your power tools of gasoline. Especially with hard freezes, you don't want the gasoline to be in those tanks. So drain them and then run your whatever power tool it is until there's no more fuel in the carburetor. You don't want to keep running it once you kind of hear that sputtering of your power tool, because that's how you ruin it, but just make sure you've gotten as much gas out as possible. And with that, it's pretty simple and easy to winterize your landscape, especially here in Texas, because it doesn't, we don't have snow for 3 or 4 months, or I think somewhere up north had gotten like 6 feet of snow over the course of a couple days. So luckily we don't have to mess with that and, plowing snow down here. You can contact us. Of course, we love to talk about plants. Our Master Gardener Help Desk, that is the phone number and the email. They are on the phones from about 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Saturday. You can always email me if you have questions. And then some great websites for you is the Aggie Horticulture website or their Facebook. And then also our Facebook, we post more classes, hints and tips for growing seasons and a whole bunch of other stuff there. And with that, I will take questions.
Brittany, there were a couple in the chat box. Are you
Okay,
able to see those?
yeah, let me take a look. Okay,
The
where do we
first one,
start?
is it too late to transplant trees or shrubs?
No, you actually want to wait until we have it consistently cold because, you know, what, a couple days ago it was what in the 50s or 40s, something ridiculous, and now it's warm. So, you have, it's not too late until it starts to get really, really warm, kind of in March and April. And any experience with a freeze miser device for outdoor faucets? I've never heard of that. I can definitely look into it. And if you send me an email, I can help you determine if that is what you want to use. But that is a brand I haven't heard of before. I grew up on a farm. We didn't buy anything fancy.
Janet, if you want to unmute, do you want to give a little more information? Janet?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's something that Howard Garrett recommended, and it's a device that you attach to your outdoor faucet. You know, they make them where you can leave your hose attached to it as well. And supposedly when you leave your water on, but no water comes through the device until the water temperature hits about 35 degrees, and it causes the gizmo inside of it to contract supposedly, and the faucet will drip. So as opposed to, I guess, dripping faucets inside your house when the temperatures really dip down. And they say, you know, it's great for outdoor faucets, for outdoor hose valves. But I didn't know if anybody's had any like hands-on experience with that.
I haven't, and I haven't spoken to anyone that has. I mean, it would make sense if it works correctly. My only caveat would be depends on what side of the house your hose is on or your faucet is. That's going to fluctuate temperature a lot. So it might start dripping when it doesn't need to, or it might not drip if it's on that west side of the house when it should be. Does that make sense?
Supposedly it's based on the water temperature, so in the pipe. So I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting little device, and you know, I thought, well, maybe you've had some experience with it since I haven't.
So
yeah, I haven't. Sorry.
John has logged on and said that he has one and it's worked fine for him for 2 years.
Okay.
Awesome.
Good to know.
So going to the when should you cut back lantana plants? That's going to be in your perennial category. So once they are nice and dormant, they're not trying to put off new growth or anything, or not still nice and pretty and green. Cut them back once they are dormant, and you can cut those to the ground and they'll come back. Cynthia asked, any recommendations for where to buy wildflower seeds for this area? My favorite place to buy them from, unless it's a local nursery to Fort Worth or Tarrant County, is Native. I have the magazine right here, Native American Seed. If you can see that kind of. They are a great company. They sell only native plants. They sell a bunch of seed mixes for butterflies to, you can look up the great mix for the kind of soil that you have, that you know, so it's going to do well. They have deer resistant mixes as well. You can customize your own mixes as well. That's all online, so you can order it online and buy it that way. Are leaf shredders a good purchase? Yes and no. You can shred your leaves with your lawnmower, but if you don't have a lawnmower or don't have really a lot of leaves that fall and it's only a small area and you don't want to bring out the lawnmower, then a leaf shredder is good. But if you have a big large yard with a bunch of leaves, just your mower is perfect. Oh yes, Wildflower Seed Farm in Fredericksburg is another favorite of mine. They do also sell the Native American seeds there as well. mind going over how to get a soil test. So you can either go to the, let me find the web address real quick for you. If you Google soil testing lab TAMU, it'll be the first thing that comes up, and it's soiltesting.tamu.edu. Pretty easy. I'll put that in the chat. So that's for the soil testing website. You can either just go online and pack your own soil bag and it tells you what to do, or you can call our office and we'll send you a pre-made bag for you. Any other questions?
Brittany, I put the link for the evaluation for this presentation in the chat box.
Perfect. Please fill out the evaluations. They help me so much to prove to my bosses that I am doing my job. It also helps for funding purposes for AgriLife when we go to our state representatives and ask for more money for us to do programming for y'all.
Exactly. Provides great feedback as to what topics
Yes.
are good.
Mm-hmm.
Got a couple more.
Any tips for the hardy hibiscus for winter? So that's a perennial that can be cut back, or you can just leave it as is if you're happy with the shape. And you can do that little bit of fertilizing with the heavy potassium and phosphorus fertilizer. Is there anything specific you want to know about them? And then can all perennials be cut to the ground? No. So that's another one that makes sure you are doing your research, know what you have, that if it can be cut to the ground or not, because sometimes it needs that more above ground growth to come back in the spring, to have more energy to grow back in the spring. And then sometimes if you cut them all the way down to the ground, they're going to be smaller. So if you want a nice, big, beautiful shrub or a hibiscus, the less you cut during the winter, the more beautiful and big they're going to be the next year. Some perennials, like lantana, is one of those few that you can cut to the ground and it does not care, and it's going to come back just as big as it was the year before. Anything else? We can Mexican sage. So that is another one that can be cut back to the ground if you want to, or you can actually just kind of cover it with mulch if it's small enough, or just protect it from the cold. But you can cut it back if you don't want to. Oh, my favorite resource book for reference. That's like asking what is my favorite appendage, or what is the one that I would least like to lose. I would say, again, not just because, I work for A&M, but Aggie Hort has a lot of great resources. There's a lot on our AgriLife Learn website where you can buy resources. I don't have a favorite book though. I'm one of those people that every single plant book I see, I want to buy. So sorry, I couldn't give you a specific one for that. I think our master gardeners also have some great books that they like. Maybe that could be a series of talking about what your favorite book is. Okay, Turk's cap advice. That can be cut down to the ground during the winter. You can pretty much abuse Turk's cap and it's going to come back. There's not much that can hurt it. So, and it can take over pretty easily if you let it. It's a great way to provide gifts for people if you pull up that Turk's cap and give them to them. And it's great for our pollinators. Hopefully that answered your question. Pruning crinum before they become mushy. Yes, prune them before they become mushy, but if you don't get to it before it becomes mushy, it's fine. You can still cut them back. I have crinum in my yard that I actually didn't cut back until they looked like they were dead, gross, and never coming back. And they are huge this year. So crinum are another one of those plants that has that good underground structure, and that kind of like tulips or something that has that good bulb and tuber underneath, that they can survive a lot of abuse. Rock rose. So I would cut back rock rose because, again, that's another one that can get really mushy and look really gross. Just cut it back a little bit, make sure there's something a little bit above the ground, and cover it with mulch. Okay, what about putting sheets or freeze cloth over pansies when we're going to get a hard freeze? That's perfect. They're delicate, regardless if they're cool season plants or not. They will freeze back. I worked at the Dallas Arboretum, and we would leave our pansies when it would freeze, but they didn't always look the best. So if you are just wanting them to be at their peak, you can put that freeze cloth over it. But they will probably survive, especially if we have snow. Snow is actually a great insulator for plants. So if you have snow that's over your plants, leave it. For however many days it's going to be there, leave that snow. Texas sage. Again, another one, a great native that you can cut all the way back if you want. You can cut it to the ground or just cut it halfway, but make sure before you cut any of these back that they are dormant, that they are done growing. Otherwise, they're not going to have enough nutrients to bloom in the spring, or you possibly might cause some kind of disease problem because they have more fleshy growth, and then they're just going to die. Coneflowers, those are more of an annual, but a lot of times you let them go to seed, you'll collect those seeds, and then once they are done blooming and once they are all done, you can pull them out of your landscape and then save those seeds and plant them for next year. I hope I answered everyone's questions.